Good morning, everybody. Welcome to this virtual workshop on managing West Virginia's forests in a changing climate. So again, as we get settled and allow others to trickle in, please use the chat box to introduce yourself, just your name, title, and organization. It's really great to see everybody here this morning. This workshop has been approved for 3.5 credits from the Society of American Forests. So if you participate in those continuing forestry education credits, please write your name and certificate number in the chat box, or you can also email me after the workshop, and I'll make sure you have my email address later in my presentation on climate change impacts on forest ecosystems. So this workshop this morning was organized by the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science, the Northern Forests Climate Hub, which is another service arm of the Forest Service, and the Monongahela National Forest. We all work together to provide these presentations, and our goal today is to provide information on the current and anticipated effects of climate change on West Virginia forests, and then describe some resources and tools that can be used to integrate climate change into your forest management. So again, this workshop has been approved for 3.5 continuing forestry educational credits from SAF. So make sure you get me your certificate number and I'll make sure you get those credits. This meeting is also being recorded, and if successful, we will upload our videos onto our NIAC's YouTube channel. So make a note to check back, check out our YouTube channel, or look for a post-workshop email. And to kick it off this morning, we have Maddie Baroli to provide an overview of our climate change response framework. Maddie is a climate adaptation specialist with the Northern Institute of Applied Climate Science, and she's passionate about the intersections between climate adaptation, forest management, and community engagement and equity. She joined NIACS in 2020 and is working on the development and implementation of various adaptation tools and trainings, in addition to working more specifically on adaptation research for the New England region. Maddie completed her master's in forest conservation at the University of Toronto. And Maddie, if you're ready, take it away.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks, Patricia, for the nice introduction. It's really great to see everybody introducing themselves here in the chat. Love to see all the AmeriCorps members. I also had my start in AmeriCorps, so that's really cool. Yeah, so for those of you who are new to NIACS, our organization exists to kind of bridge that gap between academic research and the practical information and support that land managers need to make decisions in the areas of carbon management and climate change adaptation. So the Forest Service provides our primary support, but our charter organizations, which you can see the logos of here, provide partnership and perspective. Our staff are housed in the Forest Service and several universities, including Michigan Tech, University of Michigan, Ohio State, and Colorado State. So we have over 22 staff members, and our focus is really on providing science translation, professional training, and technical assistance to support natural resource professionals. Our research scientists also pursue new research and science synthesis related to carbon biogeochemistry, climate impacts, and tree species responses. And then we lead climate change communication and outreach for land managers via regional, national, and now even some international partnerships. So one of our flagship projects that kind of brings together all of these aspects of our work is the climate change response framework. And so some of you may already be familiar with the tools and resources of the framework, but essentially it's designed to help land managers consider climate change in project level plans, connecting the dots between adaptation concepts and on the ground actions. So on the left, you can see there's 4 main components to the framework: partnerships, vulnerability assessments, adaptation resources, and demonstrations. And these all come together to help people respond to climate change at the site level. So our vulnerability assessments have been published for each of the regions that we work in, and they are geared toward natural resource professionals looking to increase their understanding of climate change science. So West Virginia is included in our Central Appalachians assessment, along with Western Maryland and Eastern Ohio. So these reports focus on tree species and forest ecosystem responses to past climate change and a range of potential future climate changes. They also incorporate species distribution models like the Climate Change Tree Atlas and Landis Pro, and an expert panel of researchers and managers basically came together to assess the vulnerability of these major forest ecosystems in each region. So this list here is just a little teaser of kind of the great level of detail on potential climate changes and impacts to forest ecosystems that is covered in the vulnerability assessments. So Patricia is going to give us a guided tour of the assessment and review many of these topics today. And it's important to note that while these assessments do provide a baseline of information on regional vulnerability, they intentionally stop short of providing recommendations or judgments about how to use the information. So that's something that is ultimately done in conjunction with land managers, and it's left up to them, but supported by this information and our forest adaptation resources. So we have a few key resources to help assess site level vulnerability and identify adaptation actions. So these resources are built around the idea that management of any particular site varies based on site conditions, management goals, and available resources. So the two key resources we work with are the Adaptation Workbook, which is a 5-step decision-making process that guides managers to identify vulnerabilities. And then that's complemented by our growing collection of adaptation menus that provide strategies and approaches for addressing climate vulnerabilities. So you can see here how the workbook breaks the planning process down into 5 bite-sized steps for managers to define what their goals are, assess climate impacts most relevant for their project location, and then evaluate what those impacts mean for achieving their goals. And then step 4 is where we use menus of adaptation strategies and approaches to identify what actions can be taken to minimize climate risks. And then lastly, managers plan for how they can monitor to evaluate the effectiveness of their actions in meeting management goals. And then this is kind of just another way to look at that process. So basically the combination of the adaptation workbook and the menus helps managers to connect the dots between these items. So between their management goals and the influence of climate change at the site level, so they can develop on the ground actions. And so the workbook process relies on this collection of adaptation menus. We call them menus because they're essentially just organized possible adaptation approaches, and you can kind of mix and match items from them to choose things that meet your needs. So this list here of the published and in preparation menus is a little outdated, I think, because now in addition to the menu topics on the left, but we've also been actively using the wildlife management and freshwater coastal ecosystems menus. And all of these resources can be accessed at our website, forestadaptation.org. And here's just a kind of snapshot of a menu. This is our forests menu. And so you can see they're organized from broad strategies to more specific approaches that are then further refined into specific tactics or silvicultural prescriptions by land managers. And then lastly, I think one of the most fun and inspiring aspects of the climate change response framework is the growing collection of adaptation demonstration projects. So each of these are examples of organizations applying this process to their real world land management projects. To date, we've used the workbook with over 400 partners and projects, and almost about half of those are summarized online. and are sortable by ownership and state. Details for them are available, and so you can kind of learn exactly what climate impacts others are dealing with, and read about how folks are taking action to help ecosystems adapt. And so if you take one thing away from this introduction today, it's basically that we have a host of practical tools that can be used to inform and support climate adaptation efforts, whether you're looking to kind of deep dive into a more specific project or just learn more. And then before we launch into Patricia's presentation, we're just going to kind of do a brief warm-up activity here to get thinking about forest health issues on the in West Virginia. So it didn't quite sync with my PowerPoint. I'm just going to pull up the Menti really quick. If you're not familiar with Mentimeter, it's kind of a polling tool. So if you want to visit, here, I'll get the details pulled up. If you want to visit www.menti.com and then use this code that you should be seeing at the top of the screen, you will be able to insert, I think, at least 3 forest, like your top 3 forest health issues that come to mind for West Virginia. And then I think I made it so you can submit multiple times. So if you're really on a roll, you could submit more than 3, but that's going to create a word cloud on the screen for us to kind of just get a snapshot. Anybody having success accessing? Patricia, are you able to get in?
Yeah, I pulled up Menti. It might just be taking folks a few minutes. You just go to menti.com and then enter that code. I can type the link into the chat box. I'm starting to see some answers come in right now.
Oh yeah, it's always somewhat disorienting as they all come in and shift around and resize. Yeah, so fire, invasive species, oak decline. Definitely be talking about oak today. Pests, beech bark disease. Spruce restoration.
Spotted lanternfly, our new nemesis. Yeah, I'm definitely seeing floods and extreme hydrology, severe weather events. On the other end of the spectrum, we're seeing drought.
Yeah, and I think when folks type in the same thing, I'm sure there are examples where folks are typing in the same issues. So I don't think they duplicate, but.
Yeah, I think the way that these word clouds work is, so see how invasive species is becoming larger text? Yeah, I think that's because multiple people have input invasive species. And NIS is also really big, which is the same thing. So we can tell already that invasive species are just a huge topic for forest management. Mesophication. Changing climate. That's, I guess, why we're all here this morning.
land cover change, high grading. Ooh, the sea of sameness. Oh, that has a ring to it.
We have a comment in the chat box. Would someone explain what mesophication is? So I can try to do that, although my answer will not be as eloquent as, Greg Nowacki, another of our guest speakers today, or other folks that are really steeped in this topic. But from my understanding, mesophication is the process by which more mesic species, like your moisture-loving species like maples, will encroach into a drier oak or oak pine system, thereby changing the whole ecology of the system and really perpetrating that moisture rich environment and shifting the ecology away from that drier environment. And so that's been happening on a large scale across the eastern US for decades as we're suppressing fire and other large scale disturbances in the forest. It's allowing these maples and other mesic species to really creep in and take over, which then creates management challenges for oak and pine and other species on the drier end of the spectrum.
Patricia, would you mind taking a screenshot of this? I think there's still a few people submitting answers, but we have 45 responses, so.
Great, I got it.
Please.
Yes.
Thank you. Great, so thanks for participating in that, everyone. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to set the scene for the rest of the day. So next, we're going to hear from Patricia.